Good evening and welcome to the Burbank Police Commission meeting for October 16th, 2024. Before we call to order and do our, as we call to order and do our roll call, I'd like to make the announcement Commissioners Ellman and Hakobian are joining us remotely this evening. On September 13th, 2022, the State Assembly passed Assembly Bill 2449, which permits teleconferencing for public meetings if there is just cause or emergency circumstances to justify teleconferencing. The commissioners are attending the annual National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement Conference in Arizona today, and will be joining us via Zoom. So welcome, Romick and Mike. Glad to have you here. And Ms. Nakamura, if you could go ahead and do the roll call.
Commissioner Chapman?
Here.
Chair Coombs?
Here.
Commissioner Ellman?
Here.
Commissioner Feruzin is absent. Commissioner Hakobian?
Here.
Commissioner McKenna?
Here.
And Commissioner Wenzel is absent.
All right, thank you. So we're going to go ahead and start with our flag salute, and I have asked Mr. Joel Schlossman, who's with us, to go ahead and lead us in the flag salute this evening.
My pleasure and my honor. Please rise, place your right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Schlossman. All right, with that, we're going to go ahead and first announcement I have is about public comment with public comment options. Thank you so much. To speak during public comment, members of the public may speak for 3 minutes in person in the council chamber, or they may call 818-238-3335. That is 818-238-3335. Members of the public who attend the meeting in chamber will speak first, followed by those phoning in with their comments. And we will go ahead and start, before we go to oral communication, we're going to start with commission announcements and reporting out by commissioners and ad hoc subcommittees. And I would go ahead and like to invite Romick and Mike Ellman to go ahead and start.
Thank you, Chair Coombs. I'll go first. It's going to be in the order of the most recent event reporting out, and also reporting out on our traffic safety committee. On Tuesday, October 8th, I joined the Kiwanis noon meeting where Chair Coombs was a guest speaker talking about the Burbank Police Commission. Fantastic meeting, really wonderful being there supporting you, James. And on Saturday, October 5th, we had our very first Drive Right Save Lives workshop. We had about 30 in attendance. It was really engaging, got a mix of teenagers and parents, a lot of wonderful questions. Presentation was by Lieutenant John Former and Motor Officer Kendricks. It was wonderful to see Assistant City Manager Courtney Padgett in the audience supporting. And the next workshop will be October 24th at 6 at Boys and Girls Club. Looking forward to that. And on Wednesday, October 2nd, I attended the board and commission dinner with my colleagues. Saw some of you there. On Tuesday, October 1st, of course, we had that joint meeting with council, and that is all I have to report out.
Thank you, Romick. Mike?
Attended the board and commission get together recognition and also the city council meeting. And that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Mike. Paul, you want to go ahead?
Commissioner Hagopian and I met with the superintendent of schools. A very positive meeting, both about traffic around the schools and the outlook for school safety officers. I think that the tide has changed and there's a lot of things to be happy about. I also attended the Coffee with a Cop at IKEA, and Commissioner Hagopian and I also were on a Zoom presentation with the South Pasadena Police Department about using electric vehicles. Their department is about 20% the size of ours. It's like 30 officers. It's very small. They did say that a lot of the problems that were presented to us have been overcome with more rapid charging and things. But more importantly to me, one of the things that they talked about was having ballistic door panels. And I think it might be something we look into. They were concerned about that the Tesla doesn't have an engine block to get behind, and I wouldn't put a whole lot of faith in that anyway. But I think that at least since we have mostly our vehicles are one officer vehicles, that even if the driver door had a ballistic panel, it might be something to think about.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate that. Mike, do you have anything you want to report on?
Yeah, I did attend the unwrap, I guess, or unveiling of the wrapped car that is the pink vehicle in front of the police station. and it commemorates an awareness of Breast Cancer Month, which it goes through the entire month. And I believe, do we still have the patches available at the front gate? Yeah, patches were available. I think they're $10 a piece. So. And that goes to support a cure.
Mike, thank you for that. Couple items. I did attend the October 2nd Board and Commission recognition event. It was really nice. Thank you to the City of Burbank for putting that on for us. I really appreciate that. I'd also attended and actually made a presentation at the Kiwanis noon meeting a week on the 9th, and offered a presentation that was very similar but short compared to what I'd presented to the City Council the few weeks before, or the week before, actually. And there was a comment that was made there. There was a discussion that took place that I'm going to include in the commission response to public comment. So I'll share a little bit about that later on. But just really appreciate the Noontime Kiwanis for inviting us to participate. And Kiwanis. And thank you to Paul and Romick for participating in that with me as well. Or actually, Paul, you weren't there.
I wasn't there.
You weren't there.
I was ill, but it was my club.
You were there in spirit. So thank you to your club and thank you to Romick for being there. We will go ahead and move on to the oral communications and for 3 minutes. And we have two speakers. Are there any other cards that need to be turned in this evening? All right. So the first speaker is listed as Mr. Relentless.
All day, every day. Just 4 things to ask you about. Number 1, please extend your public comment period from 3 minutes to 5 minutes. If folks come down here, you usually get, just a brief amount of people. You should take the time to listen. Now, number 2, this sign in my hand says no new tax, vote no on ABC. And I've audited the school district. I've attended their meetings. I'm quite knowledgeable about what's going on. And what they're asking for is $458 million. It'll cost $1.1 billion with interest, and it's mostly wants, not needs. Now, how does that relate to the police commission? Well, what happens when the city comes to the electorate for a bond that's going to benefit the police department? And they have a history of doing that in the past. We had a bond. They asked for a bond maybe 20, 25 years ago to benefit the police. So this is concerning to me that when we have a bond that we may really need and we really want to get behind, will already be extended, overextended. Now, number 3. I've been to a number of these meetings and I've heard the presentations of the police officers, and they come across as very professional and very knowledgeable about the subjects that they talk about. Now, they speak after me, so I have to wait to the next meeting to compliment them on their preparedness. But I read in the paper today that the city recognized Brent Fekete, if I'm saying his name right, and I've had some interactions with him, and that guy is a total gentleman, absolute professional, totally a wonderful police officer and very knowledgeable. And it's just, it's outstanding when you have employees like that. Excuse me. So good for him. He deserves to be recognized. Now, the 4th thing is, I've talked to you about it a number of times before, policemen have body camera. And we had an incident here a number of months ago where the police officers grabbed up a guy, put him in the back seat in handcuffs, drove him into North Hollywood, and there was a big rigmarole. It was really a nationwide type of deal. It got that much coverage. Now, I've asked to see the body camera. I've asked to hear the radio traffic regarding this call. And of course, I can't hear it. And my Burbank asked to see it, and you won't show it to him either, the police department. Now, I've seen body camera footage before. That's the whole point of having body cameras. We're paying for it with our tax dollars. And when the body camera serves you well, you roll it out and we all get to see what happened. We all get to see the professionalism. Now, that's not the case here. I listened to the chief's report on it, and I'm not buying what he's saying. May I have another minute?
We do need to move on at this time, but we'll be able to respond as well to the things that you brought up. Thank you. Our next speaker is Eric Derorian. Did I pronounce that correctly?
You did.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Commission. My name is Eric DeRoyan. I apologize for reading from this, but I know I'm on the clock. As you all know, Chief of Police Albanese is retiring, and I'm introducing myself because I want to be your next Chief of Police. I was a lieutenant and a captain here in Burbank from 2012 to 2019, retiring in 2019 with over 30 years of service between the cities of Santa Monica, California Department of Justice, and Burbank. For the last 5 years, I've been working for the Los Angeles high-intensity drug trafficking area in conjunction with public health to reduce drug overdose deaths specifically focused on the fentanyl crisis. As I'm sure you're all aware, a reform team from outside was brought in about 15 years ago. I was part of that team. I was hired in 2012 by then Chief LaChasse, then Captain Albanese, and Captain Cremens. We were brought in to change a culture of questionable police practices, nepotism in hiring and promotions, and other inappropriate behaviors. Led by Chief LaChasse and now Chief Albanese, we set in place a new set of norms, policies, audits, expectations, and a transparency. Through additions like CALIA accreditation, Lexipol policies, critical incident review boards, a robust system of audits, and installing nationwide best practices throughout the department, a dramatic change occurred. I'm prepared to continue this legacy. I have spoken to and have the support of Captain Lasacco, Captain Cremens, Captain Cornels, and soon-to-be Captain Stoll to return as Chief of Police. I have met with several senior members of the rank and file, and they support my return, citing my prior experience within the city and department. I promise I will, and believe that I have already proven I can do the best job of ensuring we recruit the best officers. Our officers get the best training. They have the safest working environment. They have the best equipment. We will keep morale improving for them, and in turn, they will continue to provide the best possible police service for you. If I do my job right, I give them the best chance of going home safe every night and giving the citizens of Burbank the best police service possible. I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, a master's degree in organizational leadership, the same degrees and qualifications that have been required of prior chiefs. I am now 56, and my wife, who is also in public service, has 10 more years until vesting in her retirement, so I'll be working for at least that long. I spoke last night and I said there's never been an Armenian chief of police in Burbank to the city council, and I misspoke and said there's never been one in the state of California. I believe there's been one in the state of California, Bernard Malekian, who I used to work for. I should have remembered. And so I say let's make history together. I have the heart to serve and still a lot left in the tank. I'll be around after the meeting to meet anyone and answer any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
Mr. Duran, thank you. All right, there's no more comment cards from the audience? Ms. Nakamura? Okay, so let's go ahead and move. Are there any callers calling in? Do we have any callers? Thank you, Ms. Garzon. Oh. We're waiting to see if we have any callers.
No calls pending.
Thank you so much. All right, so we'll go ahead and move on to item E, which is commission response to public comment. And again, I'd like to go ahead and start with Romik and with Mike, who are connecting with us via Zoom.
No comment.
Okay, thank you. Mike, would you like to go next?
I don't know what the process is for the selection for the chief at this time, but I know that I did work with Mr. Jorian in the past and had a very good experience and felt he was very useful to our police department.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and jump in next, and Paul will have you wrap up. Is that okay? So I want to start with Mr. Relentless. Appreciate you always being here. And there's a number of comments that you had made. So we were briefly discussing it before the meeting began as well, is that any changes to format, I would want to make sure that we communicate with our liaisons first from the city council. So that is something that we can explore regarding time. So regarding public comment, I appreciate the information you're providing about the bond and the concerns about that. I also appreciate the feedback that you're giving of the department and of officers within the department. You named, is it Lieutenant Feckery? at this point? Lieutenant Fecketti, thank you for that. The last one, and this is something actually that I'm actually curious about that I want to explore a little bit further. I know that there is a process for public records requests. I have never filed a request for public records in my life, and so I owe it upon myself to kind of learn that process and understand how that works a little bit, and that's something that I can do outside of this meeting, so I'm making a commitment to learn how to do that a little bit. So I appreciate your comments on that. Mr. Jeroen, thank you for being here this evening. I appreciate your presentation. I am looking forward to meeting you. Paul?
Yes, sir, and thank you, Mr. Relentless, because I always screw up your last name, and I apologize because I have made an effort on that. I agree with you with Lieutenant Federici. He ran the Citizens Police Commission or Academy that I went through. And yes, he is the poster child for gentlemen and should be the person representing us in that respect. I agree with you on body cameras. We see them a lot. I know our policy is not to release them, and the only defense of that I can understand is that they have the ability to be interpreted multiple ways, and once they're out in the public, they can be edited and interpreted. I am confident at the fact that higher authority had reviewed that body cam and gave it the stamp of approval. And last but not least, sir, thank you so much for coming in here. The first thing I said to the chief when he told me he was retiring was I was hoping that we could find some institutional leadership and knowledge, and that we weren't going to spend $350,000 on a search to go beyond. So I'm really, really happy to see someone with Burbank experience and beyond applying for the position.
Right, thank you, Paul. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move on to item F, which is the approval of minutes from August 21st, 2024. Ms. Nakamura, thank you again for completing those for us, and Paul, for your review in advance. So would you like to go ahead and call the, actually, I'll go ahead and call the vote in regarding the approval of the minutes. Is that? We need a motion to approve the minutes. Mike Chapman, motions to.
McKenna seconds.
Mike and Paul. They're ahead of me. All right, so all in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
We got two on the.
Romick and Mike? Excellent. Any opposition? Any abstentions? Okay, so the minutes are approved unanimously. Thank you for that. And we will go ahead and move on to our items of business. So the first item of business tonight is a presentation, discussion, and recommendations, if applicable, on the top 3 crime hotspots according to crimemapping.com for 2023. I believe we have a presentation from the department.
Hello, good evening, everybody. I'm Alexis Gobble. I'm a crime analyst at Burbank PD. I've been there almost 2 years now, and I'm here today to talk about top 3 hotspots from 2023. May I please have the PowerPoint pulled up? Okay. So to start, let's define what a hotspot is. It is a small area with consistently high levels of crime or other matters that require police attention. The map shown on the screen here is a heat map of all incidents from 2023. In the agenda, it was posted that the hotspot information all comes from crimemapping.com. In the beginning of August, we made a system switch, and we no longer use crimemapping.com. We now get our data posted to LexisNexis Community Crime Map, and it's a similar crime mapping website accessible to the public. On the screen, I have a screenshot of the website when it's used on a desktop and what it would look like, and I put screenshots I took from my phone, which also look pretty good as well. And of course, that's where our information tonight is going to come from. So, top hotspot of 2023 is the Empire Center. The Empire Center is a large dining and shopping center located right off the 5 freeway. Top crime types that make it the #1 hotspot is theft, fraud, burglary from motor vehicles, among many others. In the corner, I put the total incidents that lie within that yellow geofence. Second area is downtown. This area includes shops up and down San Fernando Boulevard and the mall. Again, theft is the most prevalent crime and make up that number there in the corner, followed by vehicle burglaries, and incidents of vandalism and assault were also prevalent. Last, in number 3, I didn't really know what to call it, so I just called it the area south of Verdugo and west of California. So it's an area near the 134 freeway. Again, theft is the number 1 crime type in the area, followed by traffic accidents and vehicle burglaries. And I know that was short and sweet, but thank you. Do you have any questions?
I'm pretty sure we do, again, because I want to make sure they don't get left out. Let's go ahead and start with our partners that are online on Zoom. Mike and Romick, do you have any questions or comments you'd like to make?
Thank you, Chair Combs. For these statistics that were just shown, what was the date range as far as, like, was this for this year or last year? I'm sorry if I missed that.
It was all of 2023.
All of 2023, okay. And do you have, like, do we have an idea of what the trends look like year after year? I mean, for those specific areas?
In general, they are trending upwards, unfortunately. But hard numbers, I do not have those right now.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mike?
Do you have a breakdown in terms of what time the majority of these incidents occur?
Yes, I can answer that. So at the Empire Center, most of the crime, bulk of the crime was reported on Thursdays around 1900 hours, 7 p.m. Downtown, Saturday evenings, Saturday late evenings. And then the other one, south of Verdugo, west of California area, all the time.
So what I'm going to do is, because Romick, Mike, we have you guys online, what I'm going to ask is that, because I'm not going to necessarily be able to see you, if a question or issue comes up, I'm just going to have you guys speak up and everything like that. So, but I can call on the folks here because I'll be able to see them. So if you have any other questions that come up, please feel free to chime in. I want to open it up to the room. I know I've got some questions, but I want to open it up to Mike. I believe you actually asked for this to be agendized. So did you want to start?
Yeah, and I did my own study, collecting information from crimemapping.com, which, by the way, I found a little bit easier to access than Community Map. But I did notice very specifically that in crimemapping.com, there was one specific address, not just the Empire Center, and it was specifically at Walmart. And I believe our officers are spending a great deal of time there. There's at least, at minimum, 1 call a day there for service. Does that sound reasonable to anybody else?
Yes.
If that's an ongoing situation, what is our department, how's our department responding? Or is the city manager involved, where we have some kind of communication to reduce that hotspot?
So I'm going to defer to Captain Cornels or Captain Kremens to answer this one.
Thank you. Good
Good
evening,
evening,
Captain.
Commission. Chairman Coombs.
Good evening, Captain.
Commissioners. So we do work with Walmart with their loss prevention agents to advise them on steps they can take to mitigate some of the shoplifting incidents. But the bottom line is people come in there, they shoplift. They have a very robust loss prevention program there, monitoring that, and they call. So we're going to go to the calls for service. If you're looking around at some other stores where we're not getting called, it's probably because they don't have a loss prevention program and people are walking out the door with their stuff. And that they aren't noticing and aren't calling us. So there's a balance there. We need to be responsive when a store is a victim and is calling us requesting assistance to apprehend and prosecute somebody who's stealing from them.
So the other box stores in the area are not, they're doing it as cost of business and not reporting it?
There are stores in that area that do not call us. That has started to change, as I think this is me writing my own narrative about it, but I think they've looked at the balance sheets and decided that that cost of business is getting too high. I'm not going to use any retail outlets' names, but there are stores up there that did not call us in the past that have started calling us now because they now have a loss prevention team in place, where for a while they did not.
We mentioned earlier that the crimemap.com has changed over to Community Map, which is called LexisNexis.
LexisNexis.
Yeah. Have they added any categories onto the listing of crimes? And specifically, one of the things I was thinking about is hate crimes or hate incidences.
So now the patrol captain is going to punt back to the analyst because that is more of
Cool.
her area than mine, and
All
she
right.
can probably answer that question better than I can.
All right.
I'm sorry, but could you repeat it one more time? I know it was, does LexisNexis break it down a little bit more and show specifically hate crimes? I think you can show the crime category, but you can't show that specific crime on LexisNexis. But it is accounted for in the total of, I think they're called society crimes but I'm not sure if they specifically show just the number for hate crimes that you could filter to.
This particular category has not been an issue in the Empire Center for a hotspot. That was mostly fraud. I'm just asking that
Yes.
out of the change. And we are feeding now all the crimes that we're doing. We're all feeding that through the system into community crime, and that's the same information that goes on to the kind of state and the federal
Yes,
government. Yep.
yes.
Okay. And what's the lag time for that information coming through? Is that usually within a day or two?
I believe they push it out overnight, so every 24 hours it should get an update.
I think your friend has something to say.
I was actually going to ask if I could supplement to my answer to you about our contact and work with Walmart. We also do a lot of proactive patrol work there. Our beat officers are in that area all the time, making proactive contacts. We make a lot of arrests there for other things to try and preempt some of the shoplifting problems there. We put our bike patrols out there. Times have changed, and the deterrent effect of a patrol car and uniformed officers is not what it was. I have incidents where my officers are sent to take custody of a shoplifter in a store out there, sometimes Walmart, and they are literally in the entryway of the store with a person in handcuffs, as another person is walking out the door shoplifting with loss prevention right behind them. So we work very very diligently, but we're also operating in the framework that we're given. And it's a balance between our efforts result in arrest numbers, result in crime reports. And so it does make it appear that there's a lot happening there because there is, but if those numbers were lower, it doesn't necessarily mean that the crime isn't happening. It would just be that it wasn't being reported.
Do we have any, share any facilities or have any facilities over there where we have, do we have a parking spot for the squad car all the time over there?
We find places to park. We put decoy cars out there, we make parking spaces.
It just seemed
If you're
like
talking like a
the enormity of it
substation,
was
a
grand,
substation
yeah.
or a facility for our officers to be there, no, we don't. Like I said, unless we had a booking station there, I don't know if it would have a lot of use for us to have a substation there. From an operational side of the house, I would love to have an additional station somewhere on the other side of the Fry Freeway, just for the fact of response times, or if we have the earthquake and the freeway overpasses collapse, we can work the city, but we don't have that right now.
That's interesting, yeah.
Mr. Chapman, I can add one more dimension to this answer. In addition to what's already been mentioned, we have periodic symposiums among the retail establishments where they'll meet, and we'll meet with them and facilitate one of these meetings where their loss prevention personnel, the management, and the actual loss prevention officers will get together, exchange information, and we encourage them to do that on their own, as well as the things that we sponsor through the community relations function. So we do that. In fact, just coincidentally, former Captain Eric DeRoyan, he he was one of the very first people who did that several years ago. So we do it periodically, usually once or twice a year, and try to facilitate that conversation and communication among the retail establishments, because every retail establishment has its own policy toward, loss, how much, when are they going to call the police. So by sharing information, sometimes you have organized theft people come in there and they recognize them and they can prevent it. So the emphasis is on prevention as well as the apprehension after the fact.
Are there any specific recommendations that our department has recommended, that or can recommend, that would help to reduce that crime rate?
Yes. There's a lot of stuff within the industry. It becomes very technical, and it depends upon how much they invest in infrastructure. There's a concept called CPTED. It's crime prevention through environmental design. And it's like where you place stuff, how hard it is. You're probably seeing it now when you go into a lot of retail establishments, and you'll see things locked up behind glass where you have to ask for it. It's kind of inconvenient and maybe draconian, but I mean, that's one attempt at preventing excessive loss. That's not something we recommend. It's just out there, and it's up to each establishment to do whatever they want to make it harder for theft. Product placement, where it's placed, where they have cameras. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it.
Do we urge the different stores to report crime?
Yes.
And it sounded like that we're underestimating or under collecting. They're not pressing charges.
Probably all crime is underreported.
Yeah, but this seems, from what I'm hearing, it sounds especially in other stores in the vicinity of Walmart.
I have no empirical evidence to present that. That's a supposition. I just know different stores have different thresholds. Like somebody may not call unless it's $50 worth, or maybe $150 worth. It just depends. Or they'll have a civil agreement where they catch a shoplifter and they sign that and say, we'll let you go under the provision you don't come into our store for the next 5 years or something of that nature. So not everything is a police solution. A lot of stores will come up with their own solutions on their own. But to answer your question, we do want crime reported so we know where to direct resources.
Good. Appreciate your answers there. And thank you, Cornelius.
Mike, thank you. Paul, you want to go ahead?
Well, again, in the Citizens Academy, this was one of the presentations, and it sounds like the captain is telling us that one of the businesses very close to Walmart was not calling at all, and it got out of hand, so it sounds like they're calling. My question is there any connection between the location, trying to phrase this as efficiently as possible, all these locations are adjacent to the freeway? And is that a connection? I'm not trying to say they're not Burbank people, but is it the easy entrance and exit a part of it?
Yes, usually. Crimes close to the freeway, we are a drive-through city. A lot of tourist kind of theft is what they call it, does happen here. Because it's so close to the freeway, I did mention at the Empire Side North, the 5's right there. Down on Alameda, the 134 is right there. So yes, it does correlate in my
And is down on, is that, you said auto, that's breaking into cars, or is that residential?
I'm sorry.
In area number 3, is that breaking into cars, or is that residential crime?
Vehicle burglaries.
Okay. Thank you.
Which we learned a while back that if you leave your car unlocked, it doesn't really count as a break-in, but that's another, don't ask me how I know. So I'm wondering if could we go back to the slides for a moment? I had a question for you to make sure that I understood it. And as we bring that up, I also wanted to just say how much I appreciate that this information is available to the public. So one of the pieces that I picked up, and this has been a discussion with the commission previously, is that we can do this research. And we should be doing this research, and we should be encouraging the public to do it as well. If you can bring up we can start with just the first map that had I think it was the Empire Center.
Do I need to ask for the PowerPoint again? Can you please pull up the PowerPoint again? Okay.
That's the PowerPoint.
It's like
They did
magic.
Boing, boing, boing.
See, this proves that none of this is scripted. There we go. And I wanted to go back to the slide with the empire. I think it's map number 1.
Yes. On the left, yep.
Oh,
Oh, it's a nice picture.
so they can see it as well.
Yeah.
Narek, thank
On the
you.
left there. Top
By the way.
left. Yeah. Right.
Okay.
You might be able to, there we go.
There you go.
So we're going to map number 1. So I saw something, I know we can't zoom in on it, I was using my glasses to see it. There are numbers on the spots on there. I'm assuming that those numbers relate to the number of reports from those locations?
Correct.
Fantastic. So we could actually go, so for example, I'm seeing 42, I'm assuming that that's Costco. I do not know what those number 4s are down the bottom right-hand corner. I'm assuming that that number 83 is Walmart. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
Okay, that's helpful. Just so if we go into the data later on, we can do that. And it looks like there's some other coding on there that would help us with types of crimes I'm assuming there's a key
Yes.
on the system that'll help with that.
And as you get closer, zoom in closer, look at the map, the numbers will be distributed even more on
Great.
the area.
Okay.
I chose this angle, so the numbers are these numbers just simply because it looks so nice.
Yeah, no, this is great. I appreciate this. And this is also about accessibility, so we can learn how to access this as
Yes.
well.
As long as you brought that up, is 126, is that Lowe's?
Target.
There we go. Okay, so I appreciate that. Captain Crimmins, you mentioned something a moment ago about the symposiums with retail establishments, and I just want to lift up, I know Romick at one point had agendized, this was probably a year or two ago, had agendized an item where we had discussed retail theft in Burbank as well. So I appreciate the fact that we're coming back to this and spending some time with this, and the data and access to the data is going to allow us to dive a little bit deeper and to keep better track of this as well. There was a term that was used, and I don't know whether Captain Cremens used this or Captain Cornelius, but talked about the industry, and I wrote that down and put quotes. This goes way beyond my comprehension level with economics and everything, but I'm realizing, this is actually a question to all of you. It seems like there's not just there's a science of law enforcement involved in this, and there's the calls for service, and then there's the response to the calls for service, and there's the analytics that are involved in everything. This is the part that goes a little bit beyond, and Ray, I hope this doesn't go too far off kilter with this, is that it seems like there's also a science to retail theft and tracking it. Captain Cremens had mentioned that some retail establishments don't report because it's not, for their business practice, economically, it might not make sense for them to report, and so it has to hit a certain threshold with that. There's another piece to this, and this I think this goes beyond the police commission, is the cost of doing business in relation to the cost of law enforcement response, in relation to the revenue that's generated from the businesses in this as well. And so I'm asking, I don't know if this is a question that the department can answer, but is there a symbiotic relationship there as far as police response? And the reason I'm bringing this up is because when Mike brought this agenda item up, and you addressed it this evening as well, some of the discussion is how do we reduce crime? And that would be great if we can reduce crime and everything, but there may be more of an economic driver behind this that we don't necessarily understand. So these businesses are, assuming, paying taxes in Burbank, and they're contributing to the revenues of the city of Burbank, and right, and the police department is a service of the city of Burbank, and I don't know if there's necessarily a way to radically reduce crime, but it seems like there's an economic infrastructure there with the revenue that these companies are paying to do business in Burbank, and then the service that's being provided. I'm wondering if that piece comes into the analysis with the police department in terms of response to service. If there's a situation in the community that's a nuisance, we've had presentations previously where the department will identify said nuisance, and there might be ordinances or certain activity to try to reduce that nuisance. does the department perceive retail theft as a nuisance as far as service by the department? Or is this just part of doing business in any municipality?
I would say we don't consider it a nuisance per se. I mean, it might be a nuisance to officers to go out there. Yeah, we always look at any high response location, and we'll look at the top 10, and what can we do? It could be a bar, or maybe they're over serving, something like that. It could be something like this. That's why we do have these interactions with the retail establishments to try to do that. And it's always a balance between enforcement and civil liberties. Right. And as you correctly point out, each establishment has its own standards of how they're going to respond to something. Is it worth it? And you take it out of the police realm and just look at, say, a return policy. People will take something back, it's broken, it's rusted, hey, it doesn't work anymore. Oh, we'll take it back, not a problem. So they're engendering customer loyalty. It's more to their bottom line. Okay, we'll take that, and they're not going to be picky about it. And I think the same manner of thinking goes to law enforcement stuff. Like, we're not going to call the cops on this stuff. It's not worth it. It looks bad to our image. Have a police car out there. I don't know. I'm not speaking for them, but it's just factors that go into it. Is there an economic thing? Yeah, you can probably do a PhD thesis on this stuff. I know, I think it was Sam Houston University, there's people there did studies on crime, on impact in society generally. So you can really get down in the weeds and really look at this stuff. There's an impact on us as far as how often we have to respond, or taking 2 officers out of the field for an arrest situation that, it may not, on a cost-benefit basis, we're leaving the city without 2 officers while we're taking a petty theft suspect to jail. Somebody can say, well, it's just a property crime. It's below $100. What are you spending the time for? So there's a lot of ways you can look at it. And that comes, how each individual retail establishment, chooses to look at crime and their response to it and what they expect from us. We don't look at it as a nuisance per se. It's part of our job. And, we welcome a partnership with the loss prevention officers. Some people, I've seen, like at Christmas time, particularly the holidays, they'll have somebody posted outside to prevent it, sending a very clear message. Other people are very aggressive and they want to arrest people. They look at success as how many arrests we make. I look at success as our crime stats, not how busy we are arresting people, but how much have we prevented, maybe by our presence, like, Adam Cornels was talking about a little while ago. Having a police presence there, going in there, doing a foot beat, walking through there. A lot of those things is hard to measure other than, kind of extrapolate and say, well, maybe you'll never know how many crimes as a police officer you might have prevented in your career.
Right.
So it's very hard to measure. Almost all crime stats are inferential as far as, our impact on it. That's the bottom line.
I appreciate that. Yeah. And that was right at the edge of my intellectual capacity to keep up with all the economics of it. But that's the point that I wanted to lift up, because when we had first agendized this, what we were going after, I wanted to make sure we were diving a little bit into this as well.
Two questions. One is the fraud or theft. Is there a dollar minimal or minimum? Does it have to be $100 or more, or
for what?
For a theft, fraud? No. There's no dollar amount on it. It's more of the action rather than
you're
the
taking
value
something,
of it.
you're taking property that does not belong to you without permission. That's essentially the definition of theft.
And the second question is there an additional amount of information about the origin of the people that are involved with fraud or theft? Are they outside of Burbank? Coming from outside?
I would
There's a
say,
huge
just off the
draw,
top of my
I'm sure.
head, I've been employed by the Burbank Police Department for the past 14 years, and I would say consistently well over 50% of the people we arrest are from outside the city. It goes to Ms. Gobble's point about we have an interstate bisecting the city, so it's easy to hop on, hop off, and and any other means of transportation as well. So, yeah, probably well over half people are not residents of Burbank that we arrest.
I'd venture to say that some of the major crimes that we've discussed here in the commission meetings, a significant number of them have been perpetrated by people that are not residents of Burbank as well. Paul, do you have anything else that you wanted to?
No,
ask
I
about?
think, I did have some questions, but I think you guys covered it all. So, well done.
James?
Yeah, Romit, go ahead.
I believe we have a couple of questions. I mean,
Yeah.
for a question that I have, just digging into the data, crimes committed by individuals versus crimes committed by groups of people. I know we didn't see that on the map because it wasn't specified. Can you give us a little background on that?
Most of them are individuals. I'll let Alexis speak to that, but it depends on what we're able to connect. They might be working in concert with one another, but the actual person who's stolen something, that might be the only one we're able to arrest. They might have somebody in a vehicle or a lookout, or somebody as a distraction. To be able to get them all up in the same case, it depends upon the circumstances. But we do have groups of people who will go in there together and maybe steal items and then take off in the same car. So sometimes we'll get them together. But Alexis can probably talk more to that. I don't know.
So a hot topic recently is organized retail theft. And there are organized retail theft groups. We have been hit by them. But there's also just the one person going in and stealing by themselves. More times than not, it's a Lone Ranger that we will get, but there have been groups, there are groups, and to track that, though, on a LexisNexis, a community map, would be a little bit harder. You'd have to really, dig into our system and get hard numbers for that. But distraction thefts at supermarkets are also a big thing that we have, and those are usually duos. I don't know if you would call that a group, but I would. So groups, duos, but more oftentimes than not, we will end up arresting one.
And when we do identify a group, what we will put that information out, whether we've arrested maybe one or more of them. But if we've identified them, and maybe we haven't arrested anybody, but we have pictures of them, we'll make crime bulletins. Somebody like Alexis or our detectives will send it out to allied agencies as well as a lot of the retail establishments, so they can have an awareness as well.
Thank you both.
Going back to what both officers were saying, my wife and I were in a store when a vehicle pulled up, 4 people jumped out with backpacks, and the manager actually, I guess he approached me and basically pushed me back and said, let them go. They've been ordered not to stop them. And one of the employees went out and took a picture of the license plate, and that's all they did. And at that point, I think their hire, it was a chain, and their direction had been to make sure the safety of the customers as opposed to the value of things. But I think that hopefully that's come way down. That was a couple years ago.
Does the store have a membership? The Walmart have a membership dealer where you have to show a card when you go in, like Costco? And I'm wondering, does that have any impact on crime if you have to identify yourself to go in?
The short answer is I don't know. I don't do a lot of shopping at Walmart.
Can I answer?
Yeah.
Walmart does not. Costco does. But we still get crime at Costco, even if they make it in with a card or, make it in not showing a card. But Costco is less than Walmart, but they still have to use a card. It wouldn't deter, I don't think.
And it's speculation because it depends on what the stores report as well.
Correct.
We do know Costco is safer from zombies, though, than Walmart because you have to have that card.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
Do we have, I guess you can call them frequent flyers at the Empire Center that they'll commit retail theft one week and they be back at the same store the following week?
Sometimes that does happen. It also, I'd call them a frequent flyer between agencies even. We know these people are going to Sephora's, so we'd look outside our agency and they're a frequent flyer at Sephora. So we do have frequent flyers, ones that just come back at the Empire Center. Some, few, but a number I can't name.
Okay. At the Empire Center, there are video camera trailers. Does the BPD have access to the video?
Yes.
Thank you, Captain.
Yeah, we do. We have deployed other cameras throughout the city, and it's been very beneficial. We've made several arrests that we probably would not have been able to heretofore. So better enforcement through technology. We're much more efficient, and we do pick up through high-resolution cameras license numbers, and if we don't arrest them, maybe an adjoining jurisdiction will. We put out a broadcast. So it's been very successful thus far.
Thank you. And one question, I don't know if anybody would have the answer. A few months ago, BPD had a coffee with a cop in Nordstrom's Rack at the Empire Center. I'm just wondering if that had any deterrence value that day.
Hard to say. We'd have to run do a computer run to find out, and it still may be inconclusive. I would think that for the time we were there, it would have some type of deterrent effect, but that's just speculation.
Thank you.
And we had actually heard from Captain Cornelius earlier that as they're arresting somebody, there's somebody else walking out the door engaging in shoplifting as well. So that has a deteriorating effect, unfortunately, a little bit. So it could happen.
Mr.
Mike,
Chair, we've gone through some discussion here. Very nice presentation and very insightful. I don't see any recommendations coming out of this, either from our department or from our commission.
I think the overview that was given said that as long as the retail establishments are cooperating with Burbank Police Department, that we're doing everything we can do. And so I think I don't necessarily see a need for recommendation because I think it was just a positive report.
I actually do have a recommendation. This is for the commission. Excuse me. This is for the commission for us to consider. This is not agendizing anything right now, but Captain Kremens mentioned something earlier about prioritizing, and you'd use the analogy of taking a report on a retail theft versus responding to another type of a crime in the city, and something that we may want to consider as a commission. And we'd have to spend some time thinking about how to put this together. I'm also going to recommend that we take a look at the data that's available online. Is that we may want to have a future agenda item around how the department prioritizes calls. This is something that could bring in both communications, and this would also bring in what we're talking about here, because I'm assuming that if there's a major incident going on somewhere else in the city that involves a violent crime or something like that, I'm making the assumption that that would be prioritized over a retail theft. But that's something that we can try to formulate a little bit more later on and have a presentation discussion about that later on. Does that sound reasonable to folks? Okay, and again, that's just something for us to consider. Romick, Mike, any last thoughts from you?
No.
All right, thank you for that. Ms. Gobble, thank you for the presentation, and Captain Cornelius, Captain Kremens, thank you for assisting on that as well. Appreciate that. Our next item up, it's item number 2. It's discussion on any feedback or recommendations from the Joint City Council Commission meeting held on October 1st, 2024 in the chambers here. So this is for the commission to, any thoughts or reflections that you have on it. I've got a few myself, and I'll chime in a little bit, but I'd like to hear from all of you. Paul, go ahead.
Frankly, I felt that it was reinforcing what we already knew.
Yeah.
It was obviously very similar to last year's report, and there was an awful lot of time spent explaining how they're using us as the model. I think one of the ways to emphasize that is the fact that one of our officers is at the conference in Arizona talking about our mental health program.
Mm-hmm.
So it is to the point that it's showing that we're doing things right and things to be mimicked are lessons to be learned by other jurisdictions. So I was obviously pleased with it, and I'm once again pleased with the fact that our department isn't blind to the fact that things can be improved, but they're all taken as constructive criticism and what can we do to make it better. And I don't see how we can find fault with that.
I just realized, Ray, there was this is jumping back a little bit. I realized that there was an item under E that I was supposed to bring up that just made me think of that here, related to some of it's related to the report. Is it okay to kind of tie the two together? Okay, so one of the this was at the Kiwanis, I said it right. This was at the Kiwanis meeting. There was a community member that raised this up, and this was an issue that was discussed at the joint meeting, and this was based on the OIR report, and it was about the RIPA data. And something that I just wanted to lift up, that we didn't talk about that evening. The community member had raised the concern about how the RIPA data is being used, or how accurate the RIPA data is. There was a piece that I'm going to be honest, I didn't completely understand from the community member, because they were concerned about the data, about how do you identify the racial identity of the individual in cars with tinted windows before they were pulled over. I was having a hard time wrapping my head around that, but I appreciated the fact that a community member had raised concerns about the RIPA report. And so it's not just the work that we're doing here and not just the department, but that there are community members that are concerned about that. I'm excited about the information that was provided about RIPA, but kind of extending beyond that, we were really focused that evening on the successes of capturing the data. There was a comment that was made to me. The source will go unnamed, but the comment that was made to me after the joint meeting, that was kind of a reflection on the meeting, was there was and this is no criticism of anyone, there was kind of a love fest going on. It was a very positive meeting. It felt very collaborative with the city council, with the commission, and with OIR and with the department. So it was, I think, Paul, I agree with you. It was very positive. I just want to put something out there, just to maybe to caution us, but for us to be mindful of, is that part of our role in relation to these different pieces. So OIR's job is to dive deep into investigative materials that we don't necessarily have access to, and it's not in our jurisdiction because these are issues that are under investigation. And OIR made a number of recommendations, and the department wholeheartedly agreed with them and committed to addressing them, which is great. What we did as the commission is we were providing our own feedback, not only on what we're doing, but on how we're collaborating with the city council, and also our responses to OIR, which was also very positive. I want to caution us to be careful not to fall into a pattern of just focusing on positives, because our role as a commission is to provide, it's civilian accountability. I can't really call it oversight because we don't do investigations, but I'm really appreciative of the collaborative efforts with the department, but I just want to caution us to be careful of just focusing only on positive things that are going on, because that could actually potentially undermine our ability to serve that accountability piece for the public.
I agree with you 100%, but as I said, when things were mentioned, I don't think the chief tried to buck them.
Yeah.
I don't think he tried to say that's not us. And if I remember the year before, he had said that there were a couple things where he did say we're not, and one in particular I spoke about, that we don't feel comfortable addressing, making that change. So he wasn't just reading the party line to come back to us. I think we were getting an educated, very experienced, 50-year police officer looking at the scenario and saying, this is what's best for our city. To be frank with you, I'm very confident that if an atrocity took place, this police department would police and report it correctly, even if it was internal. And I think that that's got to be the major concern that people have. And you're right, I've been accused of being too positive, for a polite way of putting it. But one of the reason has to be because the way criticism is accepted and dealt with, not accepted and moved on.
Yeah. Definitely not interested in looking for a fight or looking for a controversy, but I just want to make sure that we still hold that voice when we need that. I want to open up to Mike, Romick, and Mike, if you have any reflections or comments on the joint meeting.
I'll let Mike go first.
Well, I think the thing that has to be taken into account, it's a high-level presentation. You're trying to summarize an entire year in somewhere between 60 and 90 minutes, and you can only touch on so many issues and other things, you can't really get to because there's a time restraint.
Yeah.
The OIR report is what, about 90 pages?
It's pretty lengthy.
So I think there is a limitation of just how much can be done in one meeting. And I think we talked talked about all the high points, but I don't think we dwelled on some of the lower, less high points. So it's a learning. We'll take this and we'll try to do better next year.
Mike, to your point, one of the things about the OIR report is that it's available. My understanding is that it's available to the department before it's made public, because there's some, not negotiations going on, but there's some discussion that takes place, because I know that the staff, Janako and his team, are doing, it's an investigative process. So what they're doing is they're wanting to make sure that they're clear on the issues, and they're actually working with the department throughout the year in some cases to collect this information. So it's the final report is made public to all of us at the same time, including the public. But the department may have the opportunity to be engaged in that dialogue long before it makes it to that point.
But I think
we're getting it about the same time as the public does,
Right.
correct?
Exactly.
An hour before.
So we have about 3 or 4 days to digest it.
Right.
And so, you can't go in depth. I mean, one of the things, OIR is here in Tucson with us, and they have the report. And I had more time to go through the report here in Tucson and ask questions to them than at the council meeting. I mean, it's high level. That's my only point. It's a very high level review.
And Mike, you were spot on. It's 79 pages.
But also, again, going back to a year ago, and the item was, it involved officers' rights when they're writing their statement, time frame, whatever. And basically, the chief said he wasn't agreeing with their recommendation, and he expressed that, which I think is very powerful, because it means he's not just being a yes man. Then when I brought it up at the next commission meeting and I asked the chief about it, he said that the entire country was about 50-50 on that issue. So it was obviously a hot topic, not just in Burbank, but across the board. And it also shows that the administration of our department is not just marching in step. They're thinking, it's a breathing, and we have a lot to be happy with, including the fact that I think if mistakes were made, they'd be owned up to.
Yeah.
And I'm very confident that if mistakes were made, that this leadership, this command staff would take responsibility for it and handle it appropriately.
James?
Yeah, go ahead, Romick.
I'd love to jump in. I definitely agree with my colleagues in regards to the OIR report being very positive and the response to the OIR report being very positive from the commission and the council. And my comment during that time was, going to NACOL, experiencing the extremes of, policing behavior and the extremes of what can happen in certain jurisdictions. I can't speak for Mike, but revalidating the fact that we do have a department that holds a really high standard. And the OIR report did show the level of accountability and transparency and the willingness to cooperate and work and refine and evolve, which is, I feel like, as a commissioner, is extremely positive. However, you're absolutely correct, because, it's not a message for complacency and, being any type of cheerleader. I think that, we definitely have to be very objective in the way we approach things. But, my comments were, and I stand by it, you come to a place like NACOL and the conversations you have with jurisdictions all throughout the country, and the extreme behavior that you see is something that we luckily don't see in the city of Burbank. And we have to thank the chief and the command staff for that.
Agreed.
I would reinforce that. When I got off the plane from NACOL last year, my first call was to James, because I realized I just spent 3 days or 4 days being bombarded by trauma that we are fortunate enough to not be part of our daily life here. Some of it was, I'll be honest with you, quite ridiculous, but some of it was just beyond words. And you realize people just needed to be heard. I think that especially in the last 12 months, the improvements we've made in our mental health section have basically said, we've seen that problem and we're addressing it. And I think that's where police departments go wrong, where they see a department says, that's a problem, that's not a problem, that's not our problem. Well, I think our department is ahead of the game on this.
Appreciate that. I appreciate that. Other comments that folks have? Mike?
Something that you'd mentioned a little bit earlier is our participation in the report. The commission absolutely has no participation in it, except we get to hear it at the same time as the public does. One thing that I wonder about is that there is somewhere, and I suspect this comes from the city manager's office, is a requirements doc that they do each year, asking Mike Janako's group to the OIR to look into specific areas. I'm wondering if we have never been asked to advise or give suggestions or anything on that. I'm wondering if that's an option that we might want to look into. I don't know if the city council specifically directs them, or if that is exclusively from the city manager's office.
So, Mike, to drill down a little bit deeper, are you talking about a scope of work for OIR? Or are you asking them about specific topics that the department is asking OIR to dive deeper on?
The city contracts with OIR.
Right.
And there is some kind of requirements doc. They said, look at this, this, this. For example, years ago, one of the items specifically looked into was emails and the tone of emails. That's been dropped off or minimized in favor of some other investigation area, and which is fine. But we're representing the public, and I'm wondering if we shouldn't be giving some suggestions towards those requirements for that each year's requirements.
Ray, do you have any insight in terms of how that requirements doc is created?
My understanding is that OIR determines certain criteria to review every year, and the Burbank Police Department can't have input on those criteria. But from my understanding, it's a decision made by OIR initially in terms of the specific criteria they want to specific case types or issues they want to look into.
Okay. And Captain Crimmins, is there anything that comes from the department about that as well?
Possibly. I think those are conversations with Chief Albanese and representatives, probably like Steve Connolly. I do know that OIR in past years took a particular interest in pursuits, and so that was a particular emphasis. Last year they wanted to look, and this came from them, to my understanding, and that was to look at the mental health aspects of our mental health evaluation team and how it operated, and some of the metrics associated with it. So I'm sure they have discussions with Chief Albanese and maybe run it by him, and maybe he says, well, you want to look at something like this. It might be a collaborative process, kind of negotiation. I really don't know because I was not part of it. But I know that they did settle on some things they wanted to have particular emphasis and focus on.
So I'm realizing we may have a recommendation and I was actually going to talk about recommendations in a moment, but we may have a recommendation. The problem is I don't know who the recommendation is directed to, because I don't know who creates the list of areas that come from the city, whether it be from the department or whether it be from city attorney's office or anywhere else as to where that would come from.
I think what we're being told is that we can't make recommendations because we don't want to front load the investigation.
Yeah,
the investigation comes by what they're looking for.
Yeah, there's that, but there's a scoping document that actually goes out in advance, and it gets kind of discussed in advance to kind of set the stage. And so that's what I'm curious about, is if there's and from what I'm hearing you say, Mike, is it sounds like we may want to ask if we can get a hold of that recommendation for the OIR report document. So it's not the investigation materials themselves, but it's if there's anything that's being produced from the city on the recommendation of what should be covered in that OIR report.
So there is an agreement between the city attorney's office and OIR specifically for this report to be done yearly. And the criteria that's contained in that agreement is that OIR is to look at uses of deadly force and in custody deaths, all bias-based policing complaints by citizens, all administrative investigations in which the employee under investigation is the rank of sergeant or higher, and a random sample of administrative investigations, citizens' complaints, and uses of force reviews.
Okay.
So OIR has also included vehicle pursuits in that investigation as well. And there may be additional recommendations that OIR may want to pursue in terms of certain criteria for cases. But the main criteria are listed in the agreement
Great.
that OIR does have with the city attorney's office.
Is that agreement a public document?
I'm going to look for it right now. It should be, because it is it's a service that we've
Okay.
hired as a city
Yeah.
Agency. So I can look for that.
Thank you. If it's possible to verify that, then it would make sense for us to ask for it if it's something that we can get on our own. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, at the same time, again, what I'm calling requirements doc, ahead, already set for next year's audit?
That would be, is that contract a standing contract or an annual contract?
I'd have to look into that, but if I can have a moment, I could probably find that answer for you.
Sorry to put you on the spot like that.
No worries. It's
Can
okay.
can I let you know that in your new packet, it had the professional agreement, the entire one was in all of your packets.
Okay. So
Now,
go ahead,
my
Mike.
understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that OIR audit is looking at in internal affairs. The process in internal affairs, if there's any issues, goes up the command and then to the city manager's office. Is that correct? Along with city attorney's office, probably.
Well, I know it's reviewed among, Chief Albanese will distribute it to the command staff and have us look at it and weigh in on responses if there's some ambiguity or something needs clarification. And then if there's some things we take issue with, or we take a differing opinion on a recommendation, then we'll write a response to that. I did it 2 years ago. Captain Cornels did it last year to look at it, and it still gets examined by the command staff and approved by the chief of police before it's resubmitted to OIR. As far as the city manager's office, I don't know. I'd be talking from a place of ignorance on that.
Well, that's the city manager's office are the ones that sign the contract, right?
Correct, but I'm talking about the individual report OIR. I'm just saying personally, I can't speak to that. I can just tell you what my involvement has been vis-a-vis the finished product with OIR, the annual report every year. Who else reviews it? I don't know. I have suspicions, but I'm speaking in a public forum here, and I don't want to say something that I'm not knowledgeable on.
Makes sense.
I'm seeing some benefit in having some input from at least this commission, if not other people, into the requirements doc. Not necessarily that they have to do everything that is specified, but have some input into it. I respect Mike Giannacco and his organization. In fact, his resume, if you ever look at it, is fantastic. Online, look it up. However, I get a little bit concerned in that it's, I understand there's some areas that need to be you can't go into a lot of detail publicly on some of the items involved. And yet, it would be nice to have at least some other eyes looking at or suggesting some input into it that would maybe make the accountability more credible. Not that it's, a wash now, but I think it would be helpful in the future to have that. One thing that I have suggested in the past, and again, this is not to distort or knock OIR, is there any other companies that can do an audit for us? We have, for example, in a bank, a bank would not use the same auditing company continuously. They would have a different audit company come in. They may go back to the first one or something, but it's not a continuous line throughout the years. We've only had Mike Giannakko's OIR group. I guess part of the question would be, is there another company, one, and is there another company that has the same kind of status as far as quality of work?
There are other companies out there. I'm not going to comment on their quality of work. I don't think I'm qualified to.
All right.
Mike, you're not going to like my response to that, or my thought on that. Is doing the homework on finding those other companies, is that something that we could do independently as commissioners and possibly bring back to a future meeting, just for doing our due diligence around that, as opposed to requiring the department or the city to provide information about other companies? Is that something that we as commissioners could do?
Yeah, I think that
It's extra work, but
yeah, I wonder sometimes if we are even open to having any if the city is open to having any alternatives, or if what's the relationship? How strong is the handshake there?
Yeah.
I like your banking analogy, but I also think that we'd want to find out if the same level of credibility, because I think the credibility right now is pretty high, and if these other organizations didn't quite have the same resume as you pointed out, then maybe we would be going from the first team to the second team just for the sake of making a change. And I don't necessarily think that change for change's sake is worthwhile.
Yeah. And I don't think we're quite there yet to do that. I think there's some legwork that we would have to do.
We can,
Yeah.
as a commission, we cannot do anything at all, but we can except make a suggestion or advice.
Recommendations. Oh, but we can do our homework as well.
Yeah.
That's one of the things, just like the data and accessing the data, we can do our homework on that. Romick, Mike, I want to check in with you. Is there anything that you wanted to reflect back on?
No?
No.
Okay, all right. So a couple of different things that I'd heard, and I'd like to see if we can exercise this muscle a little bit right now. Actually, before we do that, Sherry, I hate to ask, Ms. Nakamura, I hate to ask, you had made mention a moment ago to the packet that we had received. Are you making reference to the staff report and the information in there, or was there a separate agreement?
Your new police commissioner packets.
Oh, the new police commissioner packets. Thank you. That, for everybody's awareness, when we join the police commission, we're given a packet of information. It's funny, I was just going through mine a couple of days ago in preparation for the Kiwanis presentation. There's a packet that we get that kind of goes over. So that packet actually has the agreement in it for OIR? Perfect. Okay, so we need to do our homework with that.
And that agreement should contain the scope of work as well.
Okay.
For what OIR's responsibilities are to the city attorney's office, which actually engages that contract with OIR, not
Okay.
the Burbank Police Department.
City attorney, okay.
You said the contract is new every year? Or
It's renewed, but it can be on the same terms. It's just a renewal of the contract for the specific fiscal year.
so if we get this booklet 1 year, items that the city is asking them to look into
Right.
may change from year to year, so we don't have the most current.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
So let's try something. Let's see if we can do this. And I think we have to do this formally as well when we're making recommendations. And I don't think we've ever actually done this before. This is not an agendizing item for the future or anything like that. But and we have to do this in the form of a motion and a second and everything. But I'd like to make the recommendation, a couple of different recommendations. One is that the commission have access to well, let me back up for a minute before I even ask that. Did we determine whether the contract with the city attorney's office and OIR is posted in public?
It should be available publicly, but at least to the commissioners, it was provided to all of you.
Well, we were talking if it's done on an annual basis, because it's not going to. If the commissioners are getting it in the new commissioner packet, we'll get it at one point in time. But I'm wondering if it's a public document, we can just go online and find it.
I'm looking at it. I'm looking at the prior agendas to see if it's been if we had to go and seek approval through city
Okay.
council.
Okay.
It doesn't look like we have those on our prior agenda
Okay.
items, but I can locate it and we can provide it to at least the commissioners again.
Okay.
And I'll see how we can make that available if needed. It may,
And what we'll do is we'll formalize this, because the other side of the coin is that the commissioners have to make the commitment to review all of this material beforehand. I don't want us to ask for something, as we've talked about before with data, I don't want us to ask for something that we're not going to use. So what we'll do is we'll formalize it to try to make sure that we're making a commitment to it as well. So this, I'm going to throw this out there. We'll go kind of one at a time. There's a couple of things that I'm hearing. One is that we'd like to see the agreement related to the scope of work for OIR before the work is implemented. The second is we would like to review a draft of the OIR report after a draft, not a finalized, but a draft of the OIR report after it's completed. That's actually that's the two, and the commitment is that we've got to do the homework to actually review this material as well. So
I suspect the city manager's office is not going to go for that.
So
Because it's not a signed contract.
Well, here's the beauty of it, is we can make the recommendation, and we can put that recommendation out there, and they can always come back and say no, and that's okay. But at least we're exercising our authority.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I wonder if your
Yeah, and
motion
our responsibility.
could suggest in there that we have some level of advisory level of input.
Let's spend more time with that later on, because that's we have to we're going to keep our training wheels on for right now. But I appreciate where you're going with that, and we're going to keep that in mind. And I just want to acknowledge, Mike, that this is something that you've actually brought up with me in the past as well. And just to lift up the piece that I think you're asking about is to really make sure that we're exercising, not just doing it in name only, not just talking here, but actually exercising our advisory role with the department and with the city council. Am I reading that correctly?
That's one, and also raising the public awareness of accountability.
Great.
The credibility of the accountability in our department.
I agree. I agree.
I agree 100% with your banking analogy, and I don't see a problem, but I can see the appearance of a problem. And so therefore, I think it's a very valid point.
Okay. So let's go ahead and try this. We'll see this. Ray, you're going to have to trust me on this. We'll go through it, and you can stop me at any moment that you need to.
I just want to inform the commissioners that the OIR report, even if a draft is implemented and ready and available, it's not something that's going to be circulated to the commission at that point, because that would make it a public record.
Oh.
Because it is available to all 7 of you.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
And there still has to be a review, not only by the Burbank Police Department, but from the city attorney's office, city manager's office, for corrections in terms of the factual circumstances underlying these events, for legal ramifications related to potentially pending litigation,
Yeah.
and obviously to determine if it's in compliance with the scope of work. So there's a lot of underlying factors that go into when a draft is reviewed.
Yeah.
Potentially a lot of back and forth in terms
Yeah.
of corrections related to factual circumstances and legal ramifications related to potential litigation that
Yep.
may be ongoing on certain cases. So I'll say at this point, it's highly unlikely that a draft report would be circulated to the commissioners.
Yeah.
Even if it's requested.
So
The recommendation can be made, but
Yeah.
it's highly unlikely at this point.
Do you know what participation that the city council members have? Do they have any, is it all given over to the city manager's office to take care of? Or does the city council members do any review or approval prior?
The city manager's office does the approval and review along with the city attorney's office. I don't recall seeing city council members specifically having input or review of any drafts.
Again, that would be public.
Correct.
Yeah. I don't know, but a meeting that they might do in, I think we have some input here.
I'm just
Ms.
going to jump in real quick. The city council receives the OIR report at the same time that you do.
We do.
great.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So we're gonna hold on to the recording of this meeting because this may actually just the transcript of this may actually be the official response. I want to ask before I make the motion. Is it how much extra work would this be for the city council's office if we were to make this recommendation and be told no, but have to get the response? Because what I'm not interested in putting an undue burden on the city council's office, but we are interested in kind of exercising this accountability piece.
I can say now, as a representative of the city attorney's office, we would be saying no.
Okay.
So that may resolve the issue.
That makes, I don't want to waste anybody's time,
Right.
but that might be
Right.
the answer then.
I think that's the best approach
Okay.
at this point, considering we do not want to make a draft of an OIR report that hasn't been reviewed by specific departments available to the public.
Mike?
That's of the report, and how about going back a little bit to the recommendations, or the requirements?
Well, we're going to go there in a second. So we're talking about a review of the draft OIR report now, and I think we've got official answer from council's office about that. So that, I don't think that's going to happen, but it's on record that we asked and explored it. So the second piece, so that piece is done. Now let's go ahead and move on to access to the agreement between the city and the OIR group on an annual basis.
Chair, can I also make for
Sure.
the agenda item, it's really only a follow-up on what happened at the October 1st meeting.
Okay.
So we're getting a kind of a little bit off topic, so if we wanted to get a little bit more into the nitty-gritty about the agreement
Gotcha.
and your involvement in that, it might be something we might want to make a different agenda item for.
Thank you for that. Ray, do you agree with that?
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay, all right. So we're gonna back off of that for right now, but I appreciate the discussion and the exploration of that. Before we close this, actually, one last piece I wanted to go to is I did want to provide feedback and observation on the role of the police commission at the meeting. Did it just get brighter in here, or is it my imagination? Okay, I want to get feedback on the role and the interaction between the police commission and the city council at the meeting that evening. One of the things that was my third or fourth. I'm mixing up. It's either my third or fourth joint meeting with city council and with OIR, and my observation was that it was very collaborative, and we talked about that, and we talked about the concerns of it being collaborative. But there's one specific piece I want to name, and the problem going into that meeting is that the commission doesn't have the opportunity to discuss or strategize how we're going to bring issues to the table as far as that evening goes. So full disclosure, I think folks are aware of this. Myself, the vice chair, and the secretary collaborate in advance on reviewing the report that I present, but beyond that, there's really no discussion or strategizing about how we're going to respond to the OIR report because we don't have the ability to do that as a commission. I just wanted to lift up that it seemed very collaborative. It did not seem very collaborative in prior meetings for a lot of different reasons. I won't go into that, but for this meeting in particular, I just really appreciated the sense of autonomy that all of the commissioners had in being able to speak to and respond to the city council and collaborate with the city council in that meeting.
I agree, but more importantly, I think that if there was an issue, the avenue was there to bring it up.
Yeah.
And so, to me, that's what makes it truly transparent.
Yeah. It just feels like we've learned how to play in the sandbox with each other pretty well. Mike, Romick, any comments you have on that?
No, sir.
All right. Mike?
I agree with Paul. There was opportunity to speak, individual members of the commission to speak. And if they did any kind of presentation to the commission prior to the meeting, that would be public record. I'm not sure they would need a joint meeting after that, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you all for the feedback on that. Thank you to Sherry and Ray for guiding us on that.
And just as a follow-up, since we've already discussed this, the current agreement is through March 31st, 2026. So that scope of work is already solidified, at least through that date.
Okay.
And that agreement can be found on the agenda for May 4th, 2021.
Perfect. Thank you. We know where to get that. Thank you for that. I appreciate you doing the homework on that.
You're
Did you
welcome.
get any help doing that, or did you have to do that all on your own?
I just did a quick
Google.
search.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
The Google. All right. If there's no other comments on that, we're going to go ahead and move on to item G3, which is general announcements by it's not by the police chief, it's by Captain Cremens. Brief announcements regarding upcoming events and/or items of note related to the police department. Captain Cremens, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Coombs. Again, I'm standing in, as you noted, for Chief Albanese, who's going to be here tonight. So I have three announcements. On Saturday, October the 26th, between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., we'll have National Drug Take Back Day, and people can bring their drugs to the back of the police station and deposit them. We've been very successful the last several years on these dates. Number two is we will have a graduation ceremony of 3 recruits graduating and joining the patrol force of the Burbank Police Department, and that will take place at the LA County Sheriff's Star Center in Whittier on November the 7th. And then the last date, it's tentative at this point, but it's scheduled for Wednesday, December the 11th, and that's Shop with a Cop at Walmart. It's also called Helpers and Heroes. Yeah, basically go out and shop with underprivileged kids, and I think you've all been participants in years past.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the three things to know for this meeting.
Great. Captain Cremens, thank you for, Mike?
I think we have a question.
Captain, where do the funds come for the Shop with a Cop? Is it from general donations?
I can have my subject matter expert answer that.
I can
happen to
answer
have
that
him in the
because I've written the
audience.
checks.
Oh, great. Esteemed Lieutenant Green.
Lieutenant Green, welcome.
Good evening. Yes, the bulk of the funding for that program, which are the gift cards that are distributed to the children, come from Walmart. The dinner that's held afterwards is usually a donation from a local restaurant. In years past, we've had the Hilton Garden Inn here host the dinner. We've had a couple of other restaurants actually cater the food and bring it to the police station. So it's all based on donations from community organizations and the corporate store that hosts the event.
Is there like a spot you go on to a website and you can donate some bucks or something like that?
Not necessarily, no. So this is run through a much larger national organization. There's police departments that host this event across the country. So it's very well organized. There are procedures and protocols in place as far as securing funding. There are processes for that. So there's no portal per se where a community member can just donate money towards the cause.
Okay.
Is it okay to name the national organization?
Well, it's the Heroes and Helpers.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you.
It seemed like a fantastic program. They've done it for,
We've done it since
Number of years.
1991, I believe.
yeah.
Somewhere in that.
But also local nonprofits participate and make donations. And I will say this because, you run out of fingers when you're trying to add up what the kids are buying and you get to the counter, and if they go over, Walmart has just been wonderful about it.
We've actually, what ends up ultimately happening is what I've seen most of the time is the officers will actually pay the overage.
I offered to do it and Walmart wouldn't let me.
No.
So absolutely.
So I appreciate this, and procedurally, I think we get into gray area because I don't think we're allowed to actually comment. We're commenting pretty extensively on it right now, and I just want to acknowledge
I was
that.
given a fact.
I know, and we've got to be careful to make sure that we don't go outside of the bounds of what we're allowed to do with the agenda item. So thank you for that. I also just want to acknowledge real quickly before we move on to introduction of agenda items, Captain Cremens, again, you mentioned this a little bit ago. Thank you for your 14 years of service with the Burbank Police Department, and if I recall correctly, 53 years of service in law enforcement, which you are coming up to
51,
50
but who's counting?
Okay, 51 years of service, and you are the retirement is right around the corner.
It's imminent, yeah, the end of next month.
Okay,
Thank you for the acknowledgement. Pardon me?
We're going to see you one more time?
hopefully.
All right.
Good.
November.
Good. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
So let's go ahead and move on to item H, which is introduction of agenda items for future meetings. We have 2 items that are already agendized, and they're ready to go for the next meeting, and in January. In November, we have a review of trainings received by the ad hoc subcommittee to evaluate a vision mission statement. I'll be making that presentation, and we'll be going into that discussion. And then in January, it's a presentation and discussions of the city's 2035 general plan and how it relates to the Burbank Police Department. So with that, I was just looking for it right now. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, I need commissioners' help with this. The dashboard. We traditionally have some other items that are on the dashboard for November as well.
I think we're pretty much running down I would like to add.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead and make a motion if you'd like for an agenda item.
I'm going to make a motion, and I'm hoping this is appropriate. I was looking on my phone because people have sent me, since I brought up motorized bicycles, I've been getting all kinds of articles, and I was looking for dates and specifics where the governor had signed legislation where motorized bicycles are not allowed on the sidewalk. When I asked the chief about our sidewalk policy, he said the only thing that was exempt was skateboards. And I was wondering if we could make a recommendation to city council to very simply say pedestrians have the right of way on the sidewalk. That way, that'll cover skateboards and all other technologies yet to be put out on the Christmas list.
So go ahead, let's do it in the form of a motion.
I make a motion that we recommend to the city council that pedestrians have the right of way on sidewalks in the city of Burbank.
There's a point of procedure here actually on this one, and I think you're about to address it as well, but go ahead. Ms. Garzon.
Good evening, Viviana Garzon, Police Administrator. I just wanted to let you know that City Council already requested a First Step staff report on this topic. So we are working on that First Step staff report to bring back to council in the next couple of months.
Great, thank you for that.
I'm a good company then.
Yeah, and the procedural piece I wanted to lift up is that we're now agendizing items for our meeting. So what you're describing, while very, very important for us to address, we would actually have to agendize that for a discussion.
That's why I was putting it on the agendas to be discussed. That was my motion.
Oh, okay. It sounded like you were making recommendations to city council.
I was making the motion because I knew there were your procedures.
Okay.
Well, with that in mind, again, with social media, now videos of, let's just say, motorized bicycles have come up on our trails.
Right.
Where neighbors are complaining. So I'd like to make a motion that we revisit motorized cycles for underage drivers.
Okay. So the motion is to have a presentation from the department and discussion on motorized vehicles for
motorized bicycles or cycles, however you want to phrase it, and basically underage drivers, because at this point in time, there's almost nothing that the police can do.
Well, I think it's a worthy discussion for all e-bikes, no matter who is riding on them.
I agree, but if I get pulled over on an e-bike, an officer can ask for my driver's license or my identification. If a 12-year-old can, and I'm not exactly a small guy, and my e-bike can take me from my house to DeBell. If it's strong enough to do that, it's too powerful for a 12-year-old.
So what we need to do is we need to work out what the recommendation that Paul is making is a motion to address motorized cycles for underage drivers. Let's go ahead and go through this the formal way we're supposed to do it. So Paul's made a motion to have a presentation and discussion on motorized cycles for underage drivers. First thing we need to do is we need to vote on whether we're going to agendize that, and then we will actually, let me back up for a minute. I need a motion and a second, then we can open up for discussion, and then that's where Mike can come in with the recommendation on changing that. So do I have a motion for this item? Paul motions. Do we have a second? Mike Chapman seconds. So now we open it up for discussion. Mike Ellman, go ahead.
Well, I just think that the real topic is the usage of these vehicles and how they're being used, but regardless of the age of the person on the vehicle, I think what we're looking at is proper behavior while using these type of vehicles.
So, Mike, to focus on the agenda item itself, it sounds like you're making a recommendation to motion that the motion be broadened to motorized cycles for all drivers?
Yes, for all users.
All right.
And I appreciate that, Mike, but my primary concern is unlicensed operators because we have no recourse.
Ray, before we go any further, it feels like this is moving into a discussion on the issue. And so before Captain Cornelius speaks, I want to make sure, can the captain speak right now? And should we be going there?
We shouldn't be going there.
That's what I thought.
think we can make it broad enough where the report would include all motorized vehicles, e-bikes, and specifically addressing the additional concern of underage drivers of those types of motorized bikes or e-bikes.
Thank you.
That's my motion.
Thank you for this. So, Captain, thanks for being willing to step up. But yeah.
But the question becomes that I have is, are we looking at applicable law as it affects those types of users, or are we looking at statistics of criminal activity presented to the Burbank Police Department?
Because this isn't new. Obviously, about a year ago, we had this presentation. And since that time, I think the city of Huntington Beach and a couple of smaller towns in San Diego have addressed it. My criminal activity was beyond my scope of what I was asking. I was primarily concerned with safety. I just pulled out off the side of the road to go forward down my street, and a young man on an e-bike was riding the wrong direction and I pulled out, and there was a vehicle. And it is a vehicle at that point. It's going 25, 30 miles an hour. It's a vehicle. So, and theoretically, I'm hitting a kid on a bicycle.
So maybe we address it as safety, how the Burbank Police Department addresses safety concerns with users in general of motorized bicycles and e-bikes, and also juvenile or underage individuals using motorized vehicles and e-bikes.
Ms. Garzon, I'm kind of reading your mind on this one. Go ahead.
I'm going to make a recommendation. So on September 24th, Councilmember Perez, Vice Mayor Perez, requested a first step staff report on motorized bike and scooter usage in public right-of-ways. So the first step report that we plan to take to council includes what can the police department do right now to enforce the usage of e-bikes at a high speed, right? Can we enforce it if somebody's, on the sidewalk at 25 miles per hour or plus? We're also going to discuss how many cases we see of speeders using e-bikes and scooters. So my recommendation is that we return to the police commission after we've taken the first step staff report to city council, because I think you're requesting the same thing that Vice Mayor Perez requested. So we're working on it already. We'll bring it to council, and then after that council presentation, we can bring it to the police commission.
So, Paul, do you want to rescind the motion right now?
I'll rescind the motion and just simply request a report after that report is completed. I don't want to make anybody do double work.
That is your 3-minute mark, Paul, on this item.
I did that about 14 times.
All right, so that the motion's been rescinded at this point, so we don't need to make any. Yeah, we don't need to make any further discussion on that motion. Do we have? And again, I was just looking for it, and I can't put my finger on it. Annually, we've addressed domestic violence trends, and response by the police department in November of every year. Ms. Nakamura?
So in August, your dashboard expired, and we haven't discussed any further things. So you probably need to first discuss if you want to have your dashboard again and repopulate it.
Gotcha. So I'm actually going to make a series of recommendations then, or motions. Then one of the second motion I have is I'd like to motion that we address recent trends and activity related to addressing issues of domestic violence by the Burbank Police Department for the November meeting. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Paul seconds. Discussion,
we have an
Mike?
Open motion before that we haven't completed?
We rescinded that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
City council's already working on it, so it's been
Yeah.
rescinded.
Okay.
So all in favor, actually discussion on the, on a agenda item addressing domestic violence by the police, trends by the police department? Okay, so all in favor of this agenda item?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Any abstentions? All right, I didn't see Romick or Mike online. I didn't hear from you, so I want to make sure that we still have you with us. Are they still with
They
us?
Speak up.
No, they were on that computer and I'm not seeing them. I think we
Oh.
lost count.
Are they still on? They dropped off. So with that, I need to turn to Ray because now we're under quorum. Well, hold on one second. I think we're under quorum right now, so I don't know if we're even allowed to continue at this point.
There they are.
Oh, they're back. Okay, perfect. We've got you. So I wanted to check in. We just called for a vote on addressing an update on domestic violence responses by the Burbank Police Department, and I was just calling for the vote, but I'm not sure if you all heard that or not.
We did not.
We did not.
Okay, so the motion was to have an update from the Burbank Police Department on addressing prevalence and responses to domestic violence at the November meeting, along with discussion, and the three of us here were all voting in, it was motion seconded. We voted in favor. Just want to check to see if you are in favor or opposed or abstention.
That might interfere with our wanting to cover the call conference.
So we're calling for a vote. We've called for a vote right now. I just want to make sure what your vote is on that agenda item. Yay, nay, or extension, or abstention?
For November,
Yeah.
but we wanted to agendize a report on NACO for November.
Yeah, we'll do that. We're in the middle of, we're still finishing up this agenda item.
Okay.
So are you in favor or opposed or abstention?
No, I'm in favor of
In
it.
favor? Mike?
Sounds good.
Okay, so that's unanimous there. Okay, thank you for that. Romick, did you say you had another agenda item that you wanted to propose?
Yes, absolutely. We wanted to agendize a report in November on our experiences here at NACO and report back to the commission and to the department and community. And to add to that,
Since Detective Kyles was also attending the Nicole conference, to ask her to do her report out on her presentation to the entire conference.
So the motion is to, and Ray, we can do this. We're going to have two people joining together to create a motion, right? There's no problem with that. Okay, so the motion, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I'll just let Romick make the motion and I will second it.
All right, so Romick is motioning a presentation on the NACOL conference, including the presentation by Officer Kyles. Detective Kyles? Detective Kyles, thank you, by Detective Kyles. It was motioned by Romick, seconded by Mike Ellman. All in favor? Show of hands or say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? All right, so we have that as another agenda item. Are there any other agenda items for the November meeting?
yeah, oh no, not for November.
All right. Oh. The other one. I'd like to make a motion that the commission review the annual dashboard, review and update the annual dashboard of items to be covered by the police commission.
And rekindle it.
Yeah. So I need a second on that. Paul seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Or show of hands. Romick and Mike. Are you guys still there?
Yeah, we're
Perfect.
raising our hand.
Raising hands, thank you. I couldn't see there. Any opposition? Any abstentions? All right, so we'll get the dashboard back on the agenda as well. Any other items for the November agenda?
We are probably not going to be meeting in December.
Right.
We had gone overboard a little bit on our discussion about the OIR report. The attorney mentioned that agreement starts in March 31st. Is that correct?
It actually
For each
is,
year?
the agreement's in place until March of 2026.
Yeah.
I would like to possibly bring that into our discussion. If not in November, then January.
Let's get a little more specific. What would you like to discuss?
To see the opportunities of our possible participation as an advisory group.
Okay.
To the city manager on the requirements, Doc, that they do before they sign. So they sign that somewhere before March 31st. That's for the year before, right?
Well, we've actually,
Yeah.
I just determined that it's a multi-year agreement, so it's
Yeah,
in
5
place
year.
until the 2026. So the scope of work is already set until we complete the 2026
So they
year.
don't make a new recommendation each year?
No.
No.
No. Oh,
Yeah.
The scope of work.
That's what we want to get involved with is what they're reviewing.
Yes, the scope of work stays the same.
same.
The recommendations that OIR has for the Burbank Police Department may change from year to year.
Right.
Yeah,
So
that's the part where we want to have some input. We don't need to know everything that's involved with it. That we don't need to be reading that part if it's a, potential contract. However, we should be able to say, hey, we think this ought to be looked into. Can we consider looking at?
I just realized we're using recommendations two different ways. There's the recommendations that are in the scope of work to OIR, and then there's the recommendations coming from OIR back to the department. You're asking about the recommendations to OIR and what to cover.
Yeah.
And I think that information is already covered in the agreement that expires in 2026.
And it is we're getting a little bit beyond recommending a new item for agenda for future.
Yeah.
Future.
I'd like to look into the opportunities. That's my motion.
So, just to clarify, the OIR report is an agreement between the city attorney's office and OIR. So the city attorney's office makes a agrees to the terms of that contract, including the scope of work, the areas to be covered. So I get the commission's desire to make recommendations or be part of that process, but it's technically an agreement for oversight based off of a lengthy history that the Burbank Police Department has had. And so there's a specific goal in mind for the city attorney's office in entering that agreement. But I understand where the commission's coming from, but just so you each are aware that it is, the scope of work is technically set at this point through 2026.
Can I make a recommendation on this? And I don't know if this is, and I don't want to get into this. This is the process. This isn't the actual agenda item itself. There's nothing that prevents any of the commissioners from independently having a conversation with you outside of the commission meetings, correct?
Correct.
So I'm wondering if this is something that could be done as a discussion outside, and then if there's some, whatever agreement or discussion or resolution is made of that, it can then be brought back at a future meeting. If there's a space to make an agenda item, that's something that you guys can work out in advance. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which will help clarify the motion in the future if the motion's made.
All right. I can go along with it.
Okay.
I'm concerned that the timing is important, but
Yeah.
I
hear you.
Let's
I hear you.
discuss.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for that. Are there any other agenda items for the November meeting? All right. With that, then, our item I, our next meeting date is going to take place on Wednesday, November 20th, 2000. Oh, Mike, go ahead.
Oh, it's Romick.
Romick, go ahead.
Can I make a future agenda item?
Sure.
Not for November, but in the future, maybe I'm okay with like early next year, whatever's convenient for the department. Because of, autonomous vehicles, I'm requesting to agendize a report from the police department on self-driving cars, providing any available information on safety concerns, law enforcement implications, policies, if there are any, on autonomous vehicles.
So the motion is a report from report from the department and discussion by the commission on the use of autonomous vehicles in the city of Burbank.
And if there's any safety concerns, law enforcement implications, and any policies around self-driving cars at the moment.
Is that, Captain Cremens, does that sound like a reasonable item?
We can do it.
Okay, perfect.
Is
So,
it for January then?
so we've got we don't have a, did you know when you wanted to agendize this for, or do you just want to put it on the future meeting list?
Well, we can put it on the future meeting list, and because I guess we can I can review what the agenda looks like for the rest of the year and early next year and see.
Okay.
Where.
Okay, so we're putting this on the agenda, but we're not setting a date for when this is going to be discussed. We'll have to then revisit this to set a specific date in the future. So we've got a motion on this item about autonomous vehicles and the safety implications and policy with Burbank Police Department. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
We'll let Mike second. Do I have any, is there any discussion?
I would also like to have a little discussion on the existing state laws that cover autonomous vehicles.
So to add to this, it would be the presentation from the department and the discussion by the commission would also be on existing laws. Okay. Romick, are you okay with that addition?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Perfect. Okay. So we've got a motion, we've got a second. Any other comment or discussion on that? Okay. All in favor of this agenda item, say aye or show of hands. I see the screen down there. Any opposition? Any abstentions? All right. So we'll go ahead and motion that. That's going to be for a future agenda item with a date to be determined. Any other agenda items, folks? All right. So with that, our next meeting date will be Wednesday, November 20th, 2024 at 6 p.m. right here in the City Council chamber. And with that, I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you.